the chapter president live sharing session, and we have a few topics that our executive directors and presidents have shared as ideas for us to start a conversation. So some of our few housekeeping items are to keep your microphone muted. You'll see that I think everybody, when they came in, were muted. It has a red line over the microphone in the bottom left corner of your screen. If you wish to speak, you can just take yourself off the microphone. Otherwise, to prevent feedback, if you can just leave yourself on mute, that would be helpful. As Kelly said, if you can add your chapter name into the box, that will help us know where you're from. We're going to try to provide everybody an opportunity to share ideas and express opinions as we go through this. So just be patient with us. You may use the chat box to put in your comments, and Kelly Shields will help me make sure that we've gotten to all of the questions that we can in our time allotted. And again, the session is going to be recorded, and we'll be sharing that for those people that aren't on this call, or if you want to go back and get some ideas. Okay, so some of the things that came up when I asked for feedback were talking about the board's role during this time and how we can engage members. Virtual events, I think we're all getting pretty used to this type of event through Zoom or other platforms. And now that we're a couple months into this pandemic, how do we monetize this, and what kind of topics and programs do we use going forward? We also have a question about insurance, which is going to be interesting as we move forward as well. And then we'll hopefully have some time for some other questions. So again, if you think of something, feel free to put that in the chat box and we'll get to that. And then a couple of announcements just at the end to keep you up to date on what's going on with CAI. So we're going to start off with the board's role and engaging members. And I've got several things up here on the slide. I'm not going to read to you. You can kind of read through those, and we'll just kind of talk through these. And I really would like everybody to kind of share their ideas on this. So the board's role in this pandemic hasn't changed just because our environment has. We need to make sure that we're focusing on the strategic planning, direction of the organization, and end result. I feel like right now, a lot of people just want to do something, right? And so sometimes, and you may be seeing this with some of your clients as well, sometimes people are just anxious to do without really thinking about the impact. So I'm curious as to if anybody is willing to share some of the strategic conversations you've been having, or maybe some struggles you've been having in keeping the board focused on the end results. You can go ahead and take yourself off mute if you would like to share.
This is Hope Carmichael with the North Carolina chapter, and I will just say that we have found it's easier to focus the board on some of our strategic initiatives, one of which was different ways of delivering education and kind of rising to be the manager education provider of choice in our state. And we were struggling on how to leap into digital delivery, and COVID has done that for us without worrying about whether it was perfect and doing all this testing. And so we've leapt over several hurdles, and now it is freeing our board up to imagine new possibilities. So it was really a silver lining in terms of strategic planning on that manager education strategic initiative that we had. The same thing, our two other strategic initiatives are building CEO, management company CEO value. We are seeing collaboration between management companies because of this common challenge like we never have before. And so that is opening up a lot of possibilities. And our other initiative was leveraging relationships with external partners. And that also, again, just seems like the interdependency with realtor groups, community colleges, community outreach to try and get CAI do some good with partnering with the food bank, for example, as an initiative that we'll do in conjunction with our virtual annual meeting that we're going to have in July. So those are,
Awesome.
it seems to me that this has helped us focus
on the strategy. That's awesome, Hope. Thank you so much for sharing that. Any other presidents want to share their experience?
From Long Island, it's been quite interesting, to say the least. We're in the
epicenter
where everything's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, my county is got more cases. We're right behind New York City. Mm-hmm. So it's been a challenge. We've been putting together some webinars, and we're trying to do our best to maintain, but we're a little bit stuck, you know, going to food banks, and not many people want to go out right now. And if they do, you know, there's a lot of risk for anybody to partake with, and you know, we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to digitize our newsletters in a way that they've never been. Try to add animation and hyperlinks, and figure out, you know, ways we can monetize them. And we're trying to figure out how to put together some old sessions about the typical day-to-day circumstances that our members have. However, COVID has just been the focus of everything right now.
Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming. With kind of, you know, moving into digital, not only education, but digital magazine, like you mentioned, Eric, and just kind of looking at things differently. One of the items I have up on here is helping the committees. You know, most of our committees in the chapter know their role. They know that it's to plan the golf outing or to create the magazine or to do something different. And it's really important right now to look towards those committees, and if you have staff, the staff that work with them, to help them figure out the contingency plan, because obviously things aren't happening the same way. So what are the opportunities there? And making sure that you don't just assume that they know where the board wants to go. And I love what Hope said about, you know, like really taking this opportunity to look at the strategic initiatives and make sure that you're carrying those forward. So all these great ideas out there, and I'm sure your board members and committee chairs and other members, et cetera, are coming to many of you saying, I have this great idea, right? All the great ideas in the world. And they are great ideas. I'm sure they're all fantastic ideas. I think it's really important that the board not jump to, we have to fulfill everybody's need and desire when it comes to COVID-19. Or anything related to that. And also, what's the best way to deliver it? We're all on Zoom calls all day, every day. And is that the best way to get your message across? So I'm wondering if anybody's had that experience and kind of how you've managed it or how you're struggling, if you want to share in that perspective.
Here in Ohio, we found out pretty quickly that we've got to give both options to do the teleconference as well as a Zoom meeting, especially when it comes to there are certain aspects and certain people that don't have the ability to get on the computer and just have the technology. So giving other options, and much like you're stating in the shared portion of it, you know, a phone call is just as good as a Zoom meeting to some people, and a lot of people would rather just do a conference call than actually a Zoom meeting. So making sure that everybody knows the options are there. When the Zoom invite goes out, it says you can just call in using this number, but it's nice to reinforce that they can do that from the comfort of wherever they are. They don't have to be in front of the computer.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not everything belongs on a video or a webinar. Sometimes it's, you know, maybe it's just an article or, you know, some kind of graphic to share or something like that. So really think about, try to, you know, stop and think for a minute about where you really, you know, what's most meaningful for your members, because we're overloading them, not on purpose, but we're all getting overloaded with so much information. So what's the best way?
You know, the one.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Excellent, excellent. You know, the one thing that we did, so we had our first one last week. We got over 100 people. I mean, we got close to 150. I've got to get the exact number, but it was incredible. I mean, it was, fortunately, I had the pleasure of speaking with a community manager, and it was on specific topics, and the feedback was spectacular. people loved it in the sense that they got a lot of information. They loved the comfort of their homes, and exactly, I think it was Victor who was saying about the about being able to call in and just listen. We didn't charge them for the first call, but we did get 3 sponsors that had a 30-second slot in the very beginning to just pitch their company, and they did a great job at that. We also put it on the flyer that went out on the email. We've upped that to 4 or 5 for the next one because the demand was so high, and we are going to be charging $15 a person to join. One of the things, you know, you're talking about anything post just the Zoom call. We're recording it, and we're trying to work out the platform to be able to let people listen to it. We don't just want to make it free because otherwise people won't attend the luncheon and then they'll, or the event, and then they'll just listen to it. The other option is making it available so that they can watch it for a time period, let's say 30 days, and then it expires. Like if you download a movie from Amazon Prime or Netflix, the moment you watch it, you get a window of 48 hours and then it expires. So we're thinking about those options on another form of revenue generator, but it's also making it available to people other than people that want to call in on a Zoom call.
Sure.
Out of curiosity, why is everybody using Zoom?
I got to tell you, Eric, so we looked at the different platforms, and I'm a Google Hangout guy. You know, I use the Google Meeting platform for my internally. I got to tell you, even WebEx, nothing has the features that Zoom has from what we've seen. That's just our preference because we've got the one that allows us to have 300 or 350 people calling in, and we've had on some of our seminars close to 200 people, and it works seamlessly because you can mute all. I just find it a good platform. I'd love to hear from anybody else. I know Google Meeting is trying, and they're offering it free to anybody that has a Google business account, but they just don't have the additional features that we found that Zoom has.
So we've been using for our meetings. We haven't had actually any really interactive meetings because we started off with webinars. So right now we're actually using GoToWebinar, which is a platform created by LogMeIn. And LogMeIn is the foundational platform used throughout the entire country. They were the first ones to do this. It was GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar. You know, I know a lot of people seem to be liking Zoom. I'm just a little surprised. I know to GoToWebinar and GoToMeeting, they both give you call-in numbers and they both give you access codes. So if someone wanted to attend a meeting but couldn't handle the technology virtually, they could just pick up the phone, dial the 9-digit access code, and get into the meeting live. Without having to actually show
Zoom does that too.
Yeah, Eric, I think it's really just a matter of preference. I think Zoom just, it's become kind of popular for the masses, but that doesn't mean that it's the right platform for every group or every chapter. I know that we had a call with the executive directors, you know, because they're the ones generally managing the platforms, to kind of give them some information on Zoom, and we also talked about a couple other platforms a little bit. But I mean, I think whatever works for your members is totally appropriate.
Yeah, no, totally. That's great.
Crystal, this is Mike Traven out in Coachella Valley.
Yeah.
We're using WebEx for everything, and we've had probably 12 committee meetings and luncheons and things like that, and we've been very happy with WebEx.
It's great.
Can I ask you about WebEx? Does it allow you the same as Zoom? So even if people, for example, the one thing about Zoom that I found, and it may be on WebEx, I just haven't used it enough, but so you get these little boxes that appear on the screen like we have now, and people that call in show their telephone number, you change it to an individual name, and you can mute all or unmute particular people as you work through it. Does WebEx have the same features?
Yes.
It does. Okay, I think it's a very similar platform.
Yeah, I think they all are. I think, again, they all have their little differences, but for the most part, they all have the same functionality. Let's kind of move a little bit to membership. So April was the first full month where most everyone was under some sort of stay-at-home or safer-at-home order for the full month. And our membership went down some, not a tremendous amount. And we're starting to look at numbers across the US and outside of the US and see where we're really struggling there. And some of them are going to be those hot spots like New York City or Southern California and that sort of thing we're anticipating. But kind of trying to think what the board can do to help keep those members that we have, and even, you know, make people more aware of the resources that we have. So are any of your boards doing anything in particular to assist with retaining or just getting the messaging out about CAI?
Crystal?
Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Hi, Ed.
From Michigan. And, you know, what we're doing with regard to membership, we've just had a discussion today and on a Zoom session. And what's evolving with our practice is to have a weekly Zoom session for members. And that tends to be informational and I think underscoring leadership. The role of the board has not changed, but the emphasis on leadership has been so strong because Michigan, of course, has been a hot spot and has been nationally recognized for, you know, how active our governor has been in terms of enforcing stay at home and restrictions. And so it's very much just jilted the sense of every day here. And people have been confused. And they're, like you say, Crystal, there's so much information.
Yes.
When I get done with this Zoom, I'm going to go and check my email, and I'll be like, oh my God. And then sifting through it and finding something that is relevant and meaningful. And so we saw developing this weekly fireside chat, if you will, as being a way of exercising leadership and letting people know, you know, it's okay, you know, we're going to work through this. And we make an effort to bring the expertise to these. For example, a big topic here has been about opening swimming pools for the summer.
Sure.
And so we brought someone in with expertise on that, and actually he's spoken 2 weeks now. And it just takes a minute for a quick update. With regard to the issue of membership, that came up today. This Zoom meeting was offered without charge because it's more a meeting than an educational event, a newscast, if you will.
Sure.
And so that appears to be correct. Someone questioned, they thought that there was a participant on the Zoom session that was not a member. And so afterward, that led to the discussion. We recognize that we see these newscasts as a recruitment vehicle.
Absolutely.
And so we're following that. It was like, okay, who was that non-member?
Yeah.
Let's follow up and say, hey, you know, great, welcome aboard, and then get them an application again. And so we intend to keep this weekly thing going. And again, I call it more of a newscast. We certainly are planning specific webinars that'll deal with you know, more concentrated topics like revenue streaming or delinquencies, or just what are the steps to restart once the restrictions begin to be lifted. So those will be discrete webinar events, and there will be charges for those, but we anticipate that we will continue the weekly newscast where people will know, hey, I can check in there. They're going to have people talking with knowledge about what's going on. Everybody is very much up to date. And I think that is just, you know, the leadership role is so important because we have been so confused and inundated with information, not all of it new, not all of it meaningful, not all of it accurate.
Sure.
And if we can be, you know, we can prove our trustworthiness and our accessibility, that kind of regular Zoom meeting, I think, is good in that regard.
I think it's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry, Ed.
we can send email out, and of course that happens, right? You're sending all kinds of things, but again, you know, that noise, background noise, is so loud that it becomes a real task to pick through that and figure out what's useful.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think it was interesting, like you said, that there was somebody on there that people weren't sure. I think that's really important when you're having these calls is there's people that are going to come to everything we have no matter what, right? Those same people that you saw in person, luncheon after luncheon, event after event. But it's finding the people that you haven't seen before or don't see very often and reaching out to them and saying, hey, I'm really glad that you participated today. I think that's a really important role for you as chapter presidents or of your board members, because then people are going to be like, oh, I matter to this organization. And when, you know, the renewal notice comes or the next event comes, they're going to be more interested in participating.
I must tell you, Crystal, we opened it up to everybody, the first one, and no cost. We were amazed how many non-members joined the call.
Yeah.
And we registered, which I presume most people are doing, that you send a registered invitation so they go to log on with their name, their email, and being able to access. And we reached out to all of them, and they're very receptive to joining.
Yeah.
What's interesting to see, and I don't know the stats yet, how many were homeowners and how many were board members.
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out on the national level too, is how many. Yeah.
It's a very interesting question because this pool issue in California is just a hot topic. It is huge, and unfortunately it seems to be almost along the political spectrum lines on opening or not opening, which is very sad, but nonetheless it is. And we're grappling with this. So we really, you know, and every county in California is different. Some have said open whatever you want. Some cities, for example, have basically said, we had one of our cities in Orange County say that the community decided to open the pool. Local law enforcement was called by a homeowner who then said, go ahead. The cop obviously had a certain perspective. It's fantastic. Everybody's swimming. They called local code enforcement who shut them down. They appealed it and the city council shut it down.
Wow.
In the community.
Yeah, so it's really, you know, I mean, and I've heard this in California, I've heard it in Florida, and it's probably happening in other states. But that's a really good point about making sure that you're sharing accurate and factual information, because everything's different in some of these places where you're different counties and different cities having different ordinances. So I think that's a really, that's something I took away when you were talking, Steve, is that it's so important to make sure and that it's not, you know, going down a party line or something like that, that we're putting out the absolute fact and linking to reputable sources, nonpartisan reputable sources.
It's interesting, Crystal, that, you know, we're talking about the states and the California people are talking about the counties. Certainly here in Michigan, because of the strong executive, we have one overarching rule. And so we can—
that makes it easier, Ed.
Yeah, it does. We can turn to that and say, what does the governor's order say?
Yep.
Don't act contrary to that.
Yeah, but how far does he go, Ed?
Pardon me?
How far does the governor go? You see, the problem we're facing is there's nothing that relates to HOAs. In fact, we even went to the governor with CAI and said, help us here, because you've suspended the Brown Act for city council in-person meetings and commission hearings. But we got 55,000 HOAs, but you won't suspend the civil code with in-person meetings. And so we've got this dilemma that what we're getting from the county is not really applying to us with enough detail. And it's so frustrating because we're not getting direction from anybody. Are they specific in your state?
We have strong direction and a lot of detail in this state. And, you know, some people have criticized our governor for being dictatorial. And, you know, yeah, there's the politics on that. But in our treatment of the matter, the governor's executive orders are law and do reach into all communities, so that the restrictions on social distancing and those things, those apply within our communities as well as public places.
Great. All right, I'm going to move us into our next topic, which we've talked about a little bit, is virtual events. And when we first kind of started going into this and people started having webinars, and this goes for headquarters as well, we're like, we just want to get information out there to help people and offering things for free. That's not a sustainable model for any of us. And so I'm wondering, or somebody had put out there, you know, are people charging? When do you think you're going to start charging? How much are you charging? What about sponsors? When are you going to stop, you know, being solely COVID? Are you talking about other topics? So I'm interested in anybody who wants to share on any of the items that I have on the screen here.
From Long Island's perspective, as chapter president, my directive has been that we owe our members the information. So we have not tried to monetize anything in any way, and I don't see us doing that in the near future. People are losing loved ones. Now we have kids getting sick. We have people with children or siblings on the front lines risking their life every day. People are at work, and I feel like the most insensitive thing we could do is have information and charge it to give it to people when we're living in a very not normal world.
Oh, that makes me feel guilty now for me responding.
Okay, before you respond, Steve,
guy, you know?
before you respond, Steve, Eric, I think being in a hotspot just outside of New York City, you know, the most publicly facing hotspot makes a huge difference. So I think every chapter is different. So I don't want anybody to feel bad for charging or not charging. I think we just have to all, you know, think of the options and what's right for our chapter at the right time. So with that, Steve, you charged, and
yeah. So the first one we didn't; it was free, but we did have four sponsors sponsor, and I think it was $350 each, or $250 or $350 each.
Can I ask you, I'm sorry to interrupt, Steve, but can I ask you a question about that? And I think others might want to know the answer to this. Did you, as the board or staff, go looking for those sponsors, or did they come to you saying, hey, we want to help?
No, we solicited them.
Okay.
What we did was we sent an email out to say, would you like to sponsor? And with that includes the fact that they could have a banner on the notice that went out. It included a 30-second slot for them to talk, and we're still debating whether we'll have some raffle at the end of it, or some type of prize like we normally do at the end of each one of our luncheons. So we, just to create a little bit of fun and enthusiasm for that purpose, whether it's an Amazon gift card or whatever it is. But so now for the next one that we have next week, we are charging $15 for members and $25 for non-members. Plus we're continuing with our sponsors, and because there was such a huge demand, we think we're probably going to get about 5 sponsors. And I can tell you though, my sense from members, and I've reached out to many on phone calls, they are happy to pay, primarily because they understand the financial dilemmas that we are facing as a chapter, and the fact that we need to generate revenue. So it's a big thing that they're aware of. The non-member one, I think it's important to differentiate, because we do want people to understand being a member has a value. And we don't know how this is going to go, by the way. We'll find out soon enough. We've had a lot of people enrolling. We'll see. I haven't got the exact numbers, and I'll give you some feedback, Crystal, at the next one, to give you a sense of what our enrollment was like compared to the first one. But I think what's important is the topic you have. But I'm sensing sponsors want this. It's a great opportunity for people to sponsor these things. They're getting this 30-second direct ad. They're getting it on the mailing, and you know, they've already budgeted for it. And since some of these events are canceled, some of the funds may be applied that way as well.
Sure.
So from Canada.
Oh, go ahead, Yasmin. I heard you first. Go ahead.
Thank you. So we have had a couple of webinars. We have not charged. So in Canada, we have a lot more competing organizations. So CAI is not the only one. And so we have our other organizations plus solicitors that are offering free webinars. So it makes it difficult for us to charge when everybody else is offering it at no charge. However, we are looking at sponsors, but we have to be cognizant that there might be people that are struggling and who would have supported in the past might not be in a position to support us now. So we're rethinking that. Now for us, we're trying to look at other topics because the solicitors, they're giving us all the information on what we should and shouldn't do legally, what we shouldn't open. So for example, our last one was how to effectively hold a virtual meeting. And we had about 80 participants. So we're trying to give additional value. And I can't remember who commented, we're doing the same thing. We're capturing the people that are registering, their information. And if they're not members, we're reaching out to them about becoming members. So we're trying to use the information that we're gaining now for prospecting future members.
So education, you know, is I think the obvious easy thing to do virtually, which is great. And I think all of the chapters have done really good at pivoting from in-person to virtual education. Some of, you know, the thing that I hear most often from CAI is people love the camaraderie and the networking with their peers. And I've seen some of you have had some really kind of unique things. And if you feel like you've had something that's been unique and successful, or maybe it's even something that you thought was going to be fantastic and it didn't work. Anybody want to share some of those types of activities?
I'm sorry, just did have a quick question for Steve.
Sure.
Are your sponsors able to actually work?
Well, that's an interesting question. You know, I never did the analysis. I mean, the construction guys, absolutely. The insurance person worked, you know, is obviously working from home. You know, it's interesting from our vendor perspectives. I'm quite amazed how many are still working. You know, a lot of ours are, and I think California is very different, for example, to the East Coast and the way our configuration is set up in our communities, that they're defined as essential services for purposes of construction. They're moving forward with you know, we're building language into the agreements to address that. But a lot of those vendors are proceeding forward. I mean, from the information we've got. Is that an issue that you guys are dealing with, that a lot of the vendors are shut down completely?
We can't work. I mean,
yeah. My
company is a construction company. We do about $40 million a year in business. We're family owned and operated. We're shut down.
Really?
We're completely shut down. We've been in business for 76 years and we are completely shut down. We had to lay off 80 workers. You know, so it's very real. You know, I maybe come off a little bit rough, but it's very real and different for us. And you know, so the biggest thing for us has been to, you know, from my point is our sponsors, our yearly sponsors, our bronze, silver, and gold, really the ones who put up some major money for us. So my point has always been to keep supporting our sponsors and putting them out there. At the same time, I love to have the chapter remain financially healthy, but I'm trying to find that even balance that I think Gasman is trying to find as well. And I would love to create sponsorships, but I'm trying to find someone I can relate to a little bit more to say, hey, you know, you're doing work, or people just have the money to do it. And at least I feel a little bit better knowing at least, Steve, your sponsors are able to do work, and I can't really find ours that are, you know.
I think that's a huge difference. I agree with you completely. Absolutely. Because I think what's going on your side is just beyond frightening. I mean, it really is. And I think you're offering, as you said, more of a service than necessarily sustaining the income for the chapter.
Right.
We offering both, but
yeah. But with that, Eric, like you know, even like you said, I agree with what Steve was saying, that it's more of a public service. People will remember that going forward, that CAI provided them with resources and promoted their company because they were sponsors and things like that. So again, I mean, I think it's just different everywhere, and what you're doing, it's right for you, you know, and it's right for your members. So So I want to hear some fun ideas, and I'm going to call on a couple of people if you don't share. So
this is Vicki from the Chesapeake chapter.
hi, Vicki.
Hello. We have a new committee. It's called the Lead Committee. It's for young professionals getting together, that sort of thing. Well, we were supposed to have our first social. Obviously, that was canned, but we had a virtual social. They all got drunk virtually. It was great.
Yeah, because what's a CAI event without a little adult beverage, right? Okay.
This is Hope from North Carolina again, and I'm really excited about. We are going to try a virtual conference, and we've purchased some software to do that. And one thing that I will let you all know how it works, but our keynote is going to be one of our preeminent attorneys in the state who also does stand-up comedy on the side. And so instead of having kind of the boring how to make the most of your day kind of keynote, we're going to have a stand-up comic who is someone that's very familiar to the chapter membership. And I'm personally very excited about it, so I'll let you know how it goes.
Hey, Hope, I have a question for you on the virtual trade shows. Has become a conversation. We had a program for the executive directors just a few days ago, and everybody's question is, how are we going to do like booths and make sure it's worth, for our business partners and interactive for our members and that kind of thing? Is that something you all are exploring? Is that the software?
Yes, and Leslie, at first we were put off because everything was too expensive, but you need to check in with Leslie Bloom because she found some very affordable software. We just had kind of an emergency board meeting to approve the purchase of it and that investment, and so I just think it's going to be July 23rd and 24th. You'll need to schedule a call after that, and I'll report back on how it went. Maybe we'll be the test case. Yeah,
awesome.
That's a hot topic for us because we made an early call to cancel the trade show, but then I was like, oh, maybe we're doing it too early, and that's our biggest revenue, largest revenue drive is from that, as well as we hold the liability on the books because a lot of our sponsors, part of the sponsorship includes the trade show booth. So we're like, how do we deal with it next year? Moving forward, do we credit the portion of their sponsorship if they do it for 2021 with the amount of the trade show booth? Then we were thinking about maybe doing a trade show early next year. So that's a big struggle. Really curious to hear this, but just out of curiosity, if you don't mind sharing, what type of investment was required to?
It was $20,000 for the software.
Holy moly!
But well, you have to understand we are one chapter in the whole state of North Carolina, and we're the 12th largest state in the country. So we're a super large chapter that covers the whole state in terms of membership. What we're seeing is now we can reach into the mountains and reach way out on the Outer Banks by virtual technology. So we're reaching more members than we ever could before just because of the driving distance between locations. So we're not having trouble with sponsorships. I don't know. It's going to be a test. So
and that's
we have a very healthy reserve. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I mean, Eric, that I think some of them are pricey, and that may sound a little pricey, but I think there's a variety of options. So
let me just tell you, that was cheap.
Yeah,
2000 was cheap.
Yeah, that's
a cheap
crazy.
option. Yeah,
that's crazy.
We'll send out some other options to your executive directors too, as we get them in. So we'll share some of that information so your boards can evaluate that.
We looked into that. We had a call. It took 3 weeks to get a call, and we had it on Mother's Day. And within the time period with the company that we were looking at, the virtual expo platform, they increased their prices by 50%.
The other thing to look at too, and we've told the executive directors this as well, is when you go into this, if you go into looking at some platforms, really ask questions about their expense and their service. All of these companies are getting inundated, and at some point they're going to be overwhelmed. So just, be cautious as you go in that they're going to be able to do what you want them to do. All right. Ariel, can I pick on you for a second?
Yes.
Can you share what you guys did for your Cinco de Mayo happy hour? Because I thought it was very fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a couple happy hours. They are facilitated, and the first one was free. The second one was a Cinco de Mayo theme, and it was our moderator was Ursula Burgess, which you know, she's a local gal for us and a member of the Washington Metro chapter. But we did charge for it, and in return, everyone who participated not only got entered for different raffles, we had bingo, but we received a video from a local restaurant. It's called Taco Bamba, and they really make the most outstanding creative tacos, kind of a local institution. And their head chef made a video for us, roughly about 10 minutes, of him making several different specialties from the restaurant from his own kitchen, and explaining how we could do it. So each participant, not only did we watch it, but they got that video emailed to them so that they could reference it and make it on their own. And our sponsors, which for our chapter partners, there were particular items that they had registered to be a part of. So Jamie and our education committee kind of pivoted that to these new mediums. They participate in a heavier way. We have special backgrounds, virtual backgrounds that they're given with their logos, and the chapter staff and each of the sponsors, they have that to use permanently. But
Awesome.
it's been pretty successful. People really enjoy it.
Yeah, I like the reason I wanted Ariel to share is there's a lot of different aspects to that happy hour and making it interactive and interesting. So, you know, don't be afraid to think outside of the box and, you know, continue to share that information with us.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get to, I have up on the screen now, a couple of questions regarding insurance. And Michael Crew out of Georgia is the one who sent me this information, and I think it's probably something that's on everybody's mind. And I'm going to start with the second question, and the answer right now is no. But there's a big but there. I'm anticipating we will have some information coming, but before we started developing information, I'm curious to hear from you all is if your boards have had any discussions about insurance or liability in relation to in-person events in the future and how you plan to handle that.
Yes, Crystal?
Yes.
We have been discussing this frequently, and we've enlisted, again, the expertise to our discussions from the insurance professionals who've been in communication with legal counsel for the insurers. And this question of the availability of insurance is, of course, so important to be able to provide a comfort level for the boards to be able to do their job and know what's at risk for them. Unfortunately, so far, the answer with regard to a lot of these coverage questions has been a big and sustained question mark. We get a lot of we don't know, and the answer tends to be what sort of claims will start to show up in the next few months on this.
Sure.
And we'll have sort of a working laboratory to provide answers from. That in of itself, I think, is like, well, that's not really satisfactory. If I'm sitting on a board of directors in June and things are opening up here, you know, to say, well, it's a big question mark. You know, what are the parameters for risk for your decision making? So we had our Legislative Action Committee meeting yesterday, and in that we are going to decided we will approach the people in the state capitol to see what we can do to perhaps get some sort of provisional revision to the Nonprofit Corporation Act in Michigan that will offer heightened protection to boards who are charged with making decisions under these difficult circumstances. Problem is the stakes are very high. I mean, if you make a bad call on this, we're not talking about, you know, the wrong color roof or something like that. We're talking about life and death. Yeah. And so if something goes south, you're going to hear about it. So it's very important. We're looking at exploring, again, limiting liability for nonprofit decision-making boards so that if they're operating in good faith under these difficult circumstances, their protection from liability might be heightened, at least on a provisional basis. And that's the legislative initiative we're exploring in our state capitol now.
Great. Yeah, I think we've been talking with the executive directors, and we'll continue talking about, you know, if you are moving forward with in-person events, talking with the venues to make sure what safety protocols they have in place. But as we all know, anybody can file a lawsuit. And so I think Ed's right, is the next few months are going to really be telling us to what people put out there. Can I
speak to this one point on this, Crystal?
Sure, of course,
I've just
Steve.
spent an hour on the phone with an insurance guy on this very issue, because we having another one. We have a weekly legal update through our law firm, and one of the issues are going to be this very issue. So according to the information I've got, the general liability, and I think the same concept applies for our chapter as it does for many of our communities.
I agree.
The general liability policy kicks in as an obligation to defend the action, but none of these policies cover for COVID-19. So the difficulty we face, obviously, is the indemnification side of it, not the duty to defend the actions. Now, there's this obvious legal liability issue on causation showing that they contracted it, and that's an evidentiary issue, balancing the issues between, you know, balance of probability is the evidence that they got it in these conditions. But the big issue that I think we have to think about is when we have these venues, and the venues are taking precautions, wiping things down, cleaning, representing to us that they're putting in safeguards for hosting these events, we need to look at those contracts, and we need to, one, verify they have general liability, two, they'll indemnify us as a chapter for any claims that may arise as a result of this, because you're right, the stakes are huge on a liability point of view. If they can show, let's say 10 people contracted COVID-19 and they all went to the same event on the same day, so we've got to look at the contracts by the chapter for those venues and make sure that issue is addressed in those contracts.
That's super helpful, Steve.
And additionally insured endorsements as well on that too, which is probably most important.
If tomorrow, it's probably sold out by now, but CAI headquarters is holding a webinar about insurance. And like Steve said, a lot of it probably is very similar between communities and nonprofits or chapters. But that will be recorded, so you can listen to it afterwards and maybe glean some additional information there. But this is something, you know, we're concerned about that at headquarters too, is, you know, we have events later in the year, and what is our liability and stuff. So we'll continue to look at that information and share any information we might have.
So we're applying the same principles to our chapter events as we would our amenities at our condominiums, because the same risks and would happen with us as well. Because even though, let's say municipally, they say we're allowed to open and we're allowed to have these many people, just because the municipality says we can do it doesn't necessarily mean that we should do it, because maybe we can't accommodate the physical distancing. There are challenges with getting the cleaning equipment, etc. So those are the other things that we've had to look at. And then finally, we're being told, even if we have people, because we've had people asking to have our exercise rooms and stuff opened up, and the solicitors are saying the waivers are just not good enough. So
Yeah.
we can get them to sign waivers, but whether they'll be effective or not, they're saying there's no point in doing that. So we haven't been exploring that option for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Yasmin. We have about 10 minutes left, and I think, Kelly, is there anything in the queue that we haven't addressed that we should be addressing? I've kind of been peeking at it from time to time.
No, I think, you know, there's been just a couple little discussions. I know there was a discussion about what people were doing with their golf events. And so they were talking about that a little bit, but we'll make sure that's all in the notes as well.
Okay.
But nothing outside of that, really.
Okay. Is there anything else on anybody's mind that you want to ask a question about or share about? You can either put it in the chat if you're shy, or you can just unmute yourself and share. I see Mike Trainman just put a message in about chapter awards, just to me. Yes, chapter awards. Many of you your chapters have submitted for the Chapter Excellence Awards in the various categories. We'd held off on announcing those, waiting for the annual conference to see what was happening there. We're going to be sending out those the chapter award notifications this week. So you as presidents and your executive directors will be notified about those this week.
Can you talk a little bit about the annual conference? And I'm shedding a tear here.
I know.
We were so looking forward to it. Now you're teasing us with all this information about webinars that are going to give us suntans.
I know. Well, that's
suntans. What's going on with that?
Well, that's a great lead in. I'm gonna if my screen will let me here. Oh, okay. Into it. Announcements. The second bullet I have here on the screen is the Chapter Leadership Development Workshop. So annual conference canceled. As we said, we are looking at a few virtual options that'll happen later in this year, but it's not going to replace conference. We recognize we can't replace that type of an event, but there'll be different things, some happening in June and some happening later in the year for both educational and other things like recognizing new award designees, our award winners. All of our award winners and our designees will not only be recognized this year in some way, but we're going to recognize them in person next year in Las Vegas as well. Yes, we're teasing about going to the beach. The president-elects received notification today that we're doing the chapter leadership workshop on June 10th, as we would have if we were in Florida, and we're bringing the beach to you. That is exclusively for president-elects and executive directors, just for space limitations, but we hope you encourage your president-elect to join. We have one of what I think is one of the most innovative facilitators leading us, and she's going to provide a lot of engagement opportunities, and I think it will not only be an exciting learning opportunity, but will also give you some ideas for your chapters and moving forward with virtual events. So we encourage you to do that. And then following that, starting June 17th, every week, we're going to have our live from the lounge topics, which would have been the lounge at conference that many of you have participated in. And and you will be invited to those as well. Those are just different 1-hour segments that we'll have over a 4-week period. Okay, a couple other things. We've gotten some questions from chapters about utilizing our resources for coronavirus. If you haven't already, it's the last slide on here. We have caionline.org/coronavirus. There's tons of information up there that's being updated regularly. Please use it. There's no need to ask us for permission to use it. We would love if you would cite us, you know, if you're publishing it, but otherwise just share it. You know, it's good information. We're all on the same team and we want you to put that out there. And, you know, some of the stuff you can add in, you know, specifics for your state or your locality, you know, to make it, you know, more valuable for your members in your area.
Is there any chance of CAI making some of the content free.
Which for conference?
Yeah, for conference and you know, any of the pertinent ebooks that you guys have.
Yeah, well, anything related to coronavirus right now is free. We have, you know, a lot of, you know, webinars and content and downloads and things down there. All of that is free. Ebooks, I'm not sure. We're actually moving into ebooks very soon. You may have seen some of our promotions. I'm not sure what the price points are on those or if there'll be any promotion on that. We will be having some things like annual meetings that we would normally have at conference for different member types that will be free. So there'll be different things along the way, but I don't have a laundry list right now to share.
Okay.
Other comments, questions? I see a question here about social distancing and vendors and exhibitors and what the value might be. That was Greg from Pennsylvania that put that in the chat. Anybody have any thoughts on how? I think if we hold out till July 23rd, I think it is, Hope's going to share a bunch of great information with us. I don't know if she's still on or not.
I am. I was going to say, let's hope it's great. But I was typing a question, but I'll just pose this since I'm unmuted. For those who are charging for webinars, we're doing a pool web. Everything was free. We've done 4 so far, and our 5th webinar is tomorrow with our 3 annual sponsor pool management guys. And pools, as everybody has said, is the hot topic right now. Pools are shut down in North Carolina still, but the question mark is Memorial Day. And so it's very hot. We decided we would charge for it. We've had no problem getting sponsorships. I think we're up to 300 registrants. But I'm wondering, we charge $25. We just didn't know what to charge. We don't know what people will pay for online content. So we called it special COVID pricing and just charged $25. But I'd love to know what people who are charging are charging.
So I'll share. I'm with Rocky Mountain chapter in Colorado. We're charging $20 for a manager member to attend a webinar. We had educational sessions that were shifted. So 2 CAMICB credit hours, $20, just to give you a range of what we're doing. And that's been really successful.
I can tell you we did one other thing as well. One of the, not the complaints, but statements from managers were that as it is, management companies are very tough financially in dealing with this crisis, that if we charged each manager to attend, either only one manager would show up, or 2 that all watch from the same screen or find some way of observing it. So, which I'm sure they would never do the latter because they would never defraud the chapter, but nonetheless. So what we decided was to charge a flat fee for management companies. So I think we're charging $30 or $40, and then as many managers from that company can get a login to be able to access it. So that's one way we overcame the problem for managers, so we can have 10 managers come on, but it's just one flat fee for the management company.
And Kelly just put a poll up. So if you want to put in, and we can share the results with you of what different people are charging. Looks like, wow, neck and neck with free and between $11 and $20. Okay, almost everybody's voted here. So free seems to be the majority at this point, and then somewhere between $11 and $20. So I've heard from other chapters in the past, $15 seems to be a common one that I've heard.
Yeah, I'll just say that we had a robust debate on our board about what to charge, and I completely understand that it is dependent on your locale, and I sympathize and think that Eric is absolutely doing the right thing in Long Island. But I will say that a part of the debate we had was when we had a free webinar with our 3 CAI attorneys, it was sold out at 500. And we realized that was a huge, 500 would have signed up and paid $25. And it was if you have a topic that's hot enough and you value it appropriately, I think it almost makes people respect the information more. And that was the debate that we had on our board. And so I'll only just share with you that we did throw it out there at 25. I hate that we didn't do a member and non-member price to give that member value, but we were just kind of trying to do it in a hurry. So I think that's
next
what
time
we will move to. Yeah.
Next time. And that's really important, is you want to show the value of membership. Mm-hmm. So, and it's also a good way to easily distinguish between member and non-member when you get those people on there that you don't necessarily recognize. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we are at 3:30 exactly on my watch. Any other comments before we close? I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen here so I can see more faces on my screen. And if everybody just by, oh, it's so wonderful, Kelly. I hope you take a picture for me. Just by a show of hands, do you guys want to have another one of these in a few weeks? Okay, it seems
that's
like
sort
the
of
majority.
that's an unsophisticated survey. You were supposed to get Kelly to throw up one of those
I know.
sophisticated ones.
Aren't I so glad? I'm so lucky to have Kelly to help me with all this stuff. She does all this magic behind the scenes. But yes, I did the unsophisticated raise hands, and Nick just threw up a thumbs up. So, you know, that's something I haven't learned how to do. But okay, so but it looks like the majority of you would like to have these again. So we'll set up another one in a few weeks to continue the conversation. I find it valuable, and I'm glad you do as well. And it's nice to see everybody's faces. Oftentimes we don't get to see you, so that's awesome. So with that, we will let you get back to your day. Again, thank you for taking some time to spend with us and share your ideas today, and keep sharing on the Exchange Network and amongst yourself through your CEDs. And everyone, please stay safe and healthy, and we will talk to you all very soon.